Well, hi there. Thank you for watching and or listening to Podcast is Broken, a weekly podcast in which we try to make Canadian news and politics funner. My name is Brittlestar.
My name is Steve Boots, and as always, it is more fun.
My name is Lisa. Funnerester, because that's what we do.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It wasn't last week's. Last week's had some allure, had some class to it. It seemed fancy.
Fancy?
Had some je ne sais quoi.
So now I need to
I'm not saying don't set the bar higher every week because it's too hard on you.
Whatever happens. I just let it flow, whatever.
She's mastered the art of constant escalation, though. Like, it's just, she always finds a way.
That's it. I mean, when I think of Lisa B and I think of Logan Paul, it's the same thing. They just keep setting the bar higher and higher and higher. Yep. When does it stop? That's the thing. When does it stop?
When we get there. That's when it stops.
You guys are good?
Wonderful.
Doing great.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I think this is nice for those of you who are watching, and if those of you are just listening, just know that this is apparently the first episode where our stylist has coordinated, and we all have similar tones in our outfits.
We do.
It's nice. That's
my
all.
Superhero T-shirt du jour just happened to be the right color.
Well, yeah, exactly, because it's got the X-Men logo at the top there. It's sort of an orangey yellow.
Yeah, and this is like the throwback X-Men 96 logo.
The OG.
For those listening at home.
I was going to say. No, I wasn't.
What's on your shirt? Are they dots? What's on your shirt, Stuart?
My shirt?
Yeah.
They're just dots, I'm afraid.
You never know with you, because until we get a close-up, it could be anything, right?
Yeah. That's like me and my personality as well. You never know to get close enough.
The camera doesn't give it away, but it's actually a very wide mesh, and he's just pale.
That's more accurate than you know.
Could happen.
Except for the lush pelt of chest hair I have. Now that I've said lush pelt, let's just, I want to just briefly talk about the fact that I was reading one of our reviews that we have on Apple Podcasts. And we've done really well with our reviews. And if you've written a review, thank you very much for doing so. If you've written a complimentary review, thank you even more. And most of them have been complimentary, except I was shocked when I opened up to see how the podcast was doing. And I saw this review and it's a 1 out of 5 stars. I was like, oh no.
Devastating.
What have we done? I'd like to read it for you now, if I could, please. Is that possible?
Please.
Okay, great.
Nothing would make me more
I'm so happy.
Good. Here we go. The title of the review, which I think is nice. Completely one-sided, ellipses, used only to bash conservatives. Okay. All right. I mean, there's a thought-out title, and you're entitled to your opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, warm.
Yeah. Let's continue. The rest of the review reads, full disclosure, which I quite like. I mean, there's an honesty to this, which I think that's nice. Full disclosure, I'm a fiscal conservative supporter, but I try to consume all perspectives in political analysis to understand what all sides are presenting. Therein lies the first problem. He shouldn't be coming to us for political analysis, first of all. Plus, also, I think he's lying. This podcast claims to make Canadian politics fun, funner, or whatever word they can add to this theme. He's going to call us on this. And I think this is warranted. I think this is where he's got a case. We do claim to make it more fun, funner, or whatever word we can add to the theme. And sometimes I don't think we hit the mark.
I would contend our hit rate on making things funner is pretty good.
I think it's pretty good too, exactly.
I think it's more funner than the actual politics at hand, but anyhow.
Exactly.
I think our level of funnerosity is pretty strong.
It's off the funner meter. Exactly. And it goes on. In all reality, this is nothing more than an hourly, weekly session to bash any right-of-center government or voter with no real reasoning other than juvenile name-calling. If you're interested in listening to the left-of-center drivel without any real thoughtful analysis, this is the show for you. So finally something positive, he said, which is good.
Thank you for that. I mean,
the episode we dedicated to calling Pierre Poilievre a duty head was...
I mean, that was
maybe a little egregious.
A step beyond, probably.
That's probably the only one that this person has listened to.
So if you're interested in listening to left-of-center drivel without any real thoughtful analysis, this is the show for you, as they never even consider to acknowledge any perspective other than the alt-left talking points of the week. I want to thank the person for writing the review. It's a lot of time to spend on something you don't like.
That one section on a t-shirt?
Which part?
Should.
Right before the last little part that you just read. This show's for you.
If you're interested in listening to the left of center drivel without any real thoughtful analysis, this is the show for you. So I think we could probably just condense that down by Jocko 999101, and their quote could just be, "This is the show for you."
Oh, Jocko, bunch of numbers. What a kind thing to say in his
nice?
quote.
I'll take it.
Seems like the perfect pull quote. Can we put that on our website? Like just Jocko, bunch of numbers.
This is the show for you.
Thanks, Jocko.
Anyway,
I love feedback. Funny. That's lovely.
I know it wasn't necessarily constructive, but I feel it was entertaining, and I liked it. And I appreciate it, so which is good.
I appreciate it. Even a hate listen is a listen. And
it's all downloads, baby.
I love being called the alt left.
Right?
Like what is that?
So the funny thing is, the more time you spend learning about the left, the more you find out like there is an alt left, and they're way out there.
Sure, it's a bit of a
closer
circle
to the right than they are to us. So whatever.
They're far rarer than I think a lot of folks realize.
Yeah.
I feel that any sort of listen to the three of us chatting would maybe suggest that we aren't totally, blindingly, supportive of just blank support of the left in general.
I mean,
the left.
For those listening at home without video, it is worth noting that there is a life-size replica of Lenin standing behind Brittlestar at this exact moment.
Exactly.
The animatronics are impressive.
Yeah. It used to be a Santa.
It just stands up and says, "Seize the means of production."
You just dress him up for all the seasons, right? He's the Easter Bunny, and then he's
exactly, and then he's Lenin for the rest of the year.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And then sometimes just for fun and Beatles stuff, I dress him up as John Lennon. We want to talk about a couple of things. There's been in Saskatchewan, there was a cell phone ban, sort of following the lead of a bunch of other provinces, including Ontario and Alberta. And do we know anyone that lives in Saskatchewan? In a mid-sized town
one or
larger?
Two.
Yeah.
Do they have cell towers in those mid-sized towns?
So I'm pretty sure that the largest or the tallest building in either major city in Saskatchewan is less than about 15 stories. They're not.
Do you know what they call a lineup at Tim Hortons in Saskatchewan?
Oh God,
a mid-sized town.
That
was pretty good.
I was going to say a family reunion, but that one was good too. Okay, anyhow, let's talk about cell phones.
All right, sorry. Cell phones, yes, please go on.
I don't think it's Saskatchewan specific though, because I believe every province now, I was just checking, has some form of it, except in Newfoundland, it only goes up to grade 6. But basically everywhere in Canada, there's going to be some form of cell phone ban in schools in the fall. And so here there's a couple of things. First of all, I want to get your guys' thoughts because I've got my own very heavily colored opinions on this as a teacher, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think cell phones should be banned in schools?
No.
I don't. I don't. And I struggle with it because I understand it and I've heard it from teachers, I've heard it from parents. I don't, especially when we're looking at, and I'm looking at the one for Alberta, because I believe Saskatchewan was first, and then Alberta comes in because we hold our beer. We're going to do it. So it's across the board for kindergarten to grade 12. Turned off, out of sight, no access. Mm-hmm. I think that's like pushing sand up a hill. People have had this. It's an extension of who they are. I get it. We don't want them Snapchatting and doing all that other kind of stuff during school time. But there's reasons for kids to have it. There's a lot of reasons for kids to have it, to have access to a parent or to have access to a friend. And I think anytime you do a sweeping restriction, things are going to happen. You're making it more enticing. They're going to be sneaking in their Apple 6s in their bag and handing over their Apple 14s. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't like it.
I agree with the idea. It's like pushing sand up a hill for sure. Because I think it's a losing battle. Because I think that and I'm sure Stevie would be able to say the similar thing that some parents are not awesome, and they will demand that their children supersede the rules. So I think it's a losing battle. And also, like you said, Lisa, I think that some kids are going to just be swapping out phones to hand over at the beginning of class, and they're going to keep their actual.
It's going to be like prison. There's going to be like burner phones and stuff,
exactly,
right in the wall of the bathroom.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I mean, what I've said before is that I remember doing some keynotes and stuff, and I was shocked the first time I started doing them because like all the people in the audience were on their phones. It's like, get off your damn phones. Like at least
look at
to
me.
Pay attention to me. Exactly. Pay attention to me. But it was really frustrating and first for sure. Then it got less and less as time went on because people started to learn the etiquette of phones. It's like now people are like, oh, sorry, excuse me, I'll look at my phone here. I'll just yeah, okay, now I'm done. Yeah. And they know when to put it down and when to pick it up, and they're still connected and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the one thing I know. There's always something that you're going to say to teachers. Well, if they just teach the kids how to do this, but there is a little bit of decorum that needs to be kind of instilled in the kids. And I don't know exactly how you do that. I don't know if you say like this is how you do, this is how you handle your phone, this is how you use a phone, this is how you do this without being offensive. Because if you want someone to listen to you, you wouldn't want them just gabbing away on their phone. I'm not even sure if that's going to work. As opposed to my view, would probably just be to make it so that using your phone or being distracted by your phone is going to be to the kid's detriment. I don't know how that means. Like maybe with marks or something. That's more of an older kid thing. It's more of a high school thing, I think.
Okay, I might climb up on my soapbox for a moment here, so feel free to pull me down.
We'll knock you down. Don't worry.
So I'm not necessarily against the idea of a ban of cell phones in a classroom. I have a lot of concerns about it coming from a centralized government decision. Because since when does government declare classroom rules? Right? So that's one significant issue. But the bigger issue that I really want to highlight for the folks listening at home is there are huge logistical issues with this that people have not really thought through and that the government hasn't really thought through.
Shocker.
So to start with, most school divisions don't have full classroom sets of textbooks anymore. They have online textbooks, but they don't have enough computers in the school for one-to-one device for every kid. And the way that we made up those tech gaps was phones.
Yeah.
What now? Right? There's not going to be enough tech in the schools. But more than that, the plan is apparently for these phones to be stored somewhere within the school or within the students' lockers or any of that stuff. What's a phone cost? $1,000?
Yeah.
30 phones? You're asking the teacher to store $30,000 worth of somebody else's merchandise uninsured?
Yeah.
No. But the other one that's really, really important that I think people need to wrap their heads around is in Saskatchewan. They just passed this parents' rights thing that basically says like parents get final say on most educational stuff. So if a kid brings their phone to school and says, my mom says I can use my phone, and the kid gets sent to the principal's office, principal says, give me the phone. Kid says, no, my mom says I keep the phone. Parental rights. What now?
But wouldn't that be great, though?
What way now, Western man?
Right?
Conservative
like, government.
What's the plan? Genuine question. You going to suspend a kid to protect their education from their cell phone?
But no parental rights, because that's their other primary focus.
But this is the issue, so they declared this policy from on high and are basically telling school divisions, figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. So force of law to tell us to do it, but not force of law to enforce it.
Which is hilarious because, you've got this one side of the argument that says schools should be back like they used to be when I was a kid, and they should be, the teacher should be in charge, and they should teach with an iron fist, and kids should be focused in school and not be distracted. And also, I would think that teachers are commies, and I think that they shouldn't be in charge of anything, and it should be up to the parents to decide what to do. And we shouldn't trust them whatsoever. And it's exactly as you said. I don't think that they've thought this through at all.
It's Schrodinger's teacher. We are impossibly weak and helpless, but also all we need to do is simply exercise our phenomenal power, which we have no access to in any way. But also teachers need to fix everything and need to tell parents what to do, but parents don't listen to teachers. And it's everybody expects teachers to somehow magically fix this stuff. But the real problem here is that it's a smokescreen, right? There are real serious problems in schools. If you look at PISA test results around the world.
What are PISA tests? What's that?
It's the International Education Assessment. Like, it's basically how the UN assesses schools around the world. Sorry, I'm wandering right into acronyms now. They assess students around the world every couple of years, doing a sort of standardized assessment. It's not perfect, but it's a general measure. And since 2020, the scores have plummeted. Now, part of that's the COVID disruption, but there's more than that going on. There has to be. Right? And so when you look at school systems and you're saying, okay, these kids are struggling, is it the underfunding, the under-resourcing, the lack of teachers, the high turnover, the unsafe spaces? Is it the crumbling buildings, the lack of educational psychiatrists, the lack of counselors? No, it's the phones. Get the phones. It's going to be the phones.
But are we surprised?
Because that's the one solution that doesn't cost any money. So they say, get the phones. Problem solved, baby. And so when you treat it like it's in a vacuum, they're just going to jump to the next thing to blame after this.
It's a Band-Aid, though. Excuse me. It's a Band-Aid on something. And ironically, with the testing, if you come to Alberta, we're going to be testing kids every 35 minutes in school now, apparently, because that's something that they're putting in place. I'm not pro kids on their phones during class looking at other things. I just don't think... I worry about, so you lock... how does it work in a high school? You lock your phone in a homeroom, and then at the end of the day, you have to go, or at lunch, you have to go, or on your spare, you have to go to the homeroom to get... Where's the sign out? Do they have to be labeled? There's so much. And I worry about the kid, even if it's one kid, because there's going to be a kid that is dealing with bullying, that the, teachers aren't helping or don't believe. And if they don't have access to call a parent, what happens to that kid? Because you can't tell me that there's phone booths or pay phones in schools anymore, right?
No.
But even beyond the more sort of extreme cases where somebody's in physical danger like that, there are a lot of cases where people are using these phones to get through the day in very meaningful ways. Like, one obvious example is medical testing. There are tons of kids walking around with blood sugar testers that are, in their arm, that Bluetooth onto their phone, and that's how they measure their blood sugar. What are we just going to tell them? No such luck? There are lots of kids who use their phone for text to speech because they have difficulty communicating. There are a lot and so the schools, the rules say that there can be exceptions administered. But number one, that's going to get incredibly overwhelming to administer. What's the threshold? Do you need a doctor's note to say, this is their prescription phone? I don't think it's really going to work like that. But there's also a whole layer of kids if I am working in a busy room, if I don't have headphones, then I'm sorry, but I'm not working in a busy room. I am sitting in a busy room and I look like I'm working.
Yeah.
Right? And so are we just going to take that off the table for the people who really need that?
Well, and
it's so short-sighted.
Do 6-year-olds really have cell phones now?
It's less the 6-year-olds and more so there's sort of a gradual phase in that starts usually around grade 4 or 5, sometimes a little later, sometimes a little earlier, depending on the community. Usually cell phones are pretty widely owned by the start of high school. There's no middle school in Saskatchewan. It's just K to 8 and then 9 to 12. So around grade 9, they're pretty widespread.
Yeah.
The heart of the problem is in high schools. But really, if you ask me, the heart of the problem, and I think Stuart was pointing at this earlier, is an inability to manage your relationship with it. Right? If you are telling a kid it's full off or full on, either you can use it or you can't, you aren't teaching them to manage their relationship with it at all. Right? It's have you ever been on a diet where you're I'm not going to eat any fast food for the next month?
Yeah.
And then day 32, you're just
eating a million Big Macs.
Exactly. Just hooking in my veins, man.
Yeah.
Because you're not managing your relationship with it. There's way healthier ways to do that. And so this total self-denial isn't going to solve that. But what it's also going to do is this sounds so bad, but there are a lot of kids out there who don't like school. Like a lot. And
I mean, I could have said that, but I mean,
they're the professionals.
It's worse than it used to be, I would strongly suggest. And I think a big part of that is feeling like they live in a world that doesn't care about them very much.
Mm-hmm.
And so their only solution, what they see, is a society that views them as a problem. And their solution was to collectively take away their favorite thing. Like, oh yeah, that's going to bring the buy-in right through the roof. They're going to be psyched in the fall.
Like, do you think it's one of those things that just spiraled because, we've had cell phones for a long time now, right, in various forms, and now they're much more intricate than they were. But, like, do you think that that's a fault in, like, let's say the curriculum, right, of, like, introduction? No?
Kids are generally getting the sort of, it's in the health curriculum in most grades, in most provinces. I'll tell you what the heart of the problem really is when it comes to, especially in the middle years and younger ages, what the main distraction coming from the phones is? Parents. The people the kids are texting are their parents. But the parents are using the phone to micromanage their kid during the day. And so I don't know what the answer to it is, but the answer has to involve parental buy-in. Because these parents really are like texting their kids on the sneaky
at a whim,
all freaking day.
Yeah.
And so if you have a situation where like a kid gets into trouble for something and you're talking to them about something they shouldn't have done or whatever, 10 minutes later, you've got a phone call from the principal saying, well, I've got so-and-so's parent on the phone saying this happened in your classroom. And it's like, what? Like, because the kid snuck off and texted. But the other problem that we're going to run into is if you ban kids from doing something, they just get more creative at doing it. Right?
Well, I mean,
how have we not learned that?
The parallels to abstinence is pretty funny. I mean, it's a technological abstinence, right? Is what they're trying to push for.
No teacher will ever forget the first time that they entered into a school washroom and saw a vape taped to a toilet. And you went, oh my God, what is wrong with people? Because that's how they hide them and they share their toilet vapes.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Toilet vapes.
I can see like there's a need for education for the younger students, like those grade 4 or 5 students as they're getting up towards high school age, to be taught like basic, like you said, management skills for the tool that it is, and knowing how when it's gonna benefit them and when it's not gonna benefit them. Here's the good stuff about having a phone. Here's the stuff that you're gonna miss out on if you're distracted by your phone or whatever.
And that's a big part of that though is parenting.
Oh, for sure.
And I won't get specific, but there's a family member of mine who, they're one of their young ones is getting old enough to want a phone.
Sure.
And so they've got like an old phone. There's no SIM card in or anything. They're just on the Wi-Fi. And they use it exclusively to text family members. So they can practice texting someone safe.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a great idea. That's gradually working them into a safe and healthy relationship with this stuff. Because total denial is just like, do you remember moving out of your parents' house and eating just horrifyingly for the first like 2 weeks? Like all those things you were told never to eat. And you felt like no horrible. And you were like, oh, that's why said no.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of that, right? They're just going to binge themselves on all this awful stuff. And it just gets way out of hand so fast.
Plus, it's evident that you can't just educate one side of the problem. You can't just educate the kids and tell them what to do. You're really going to have the need for schools to, it's hard for, and it's such it's a terrible thing. As you said, it's terrible to sort of just push it off to the teachers and the boards to sort of figure out how to do this. However, you can see the benefits of having, in its simplest form, an assembly with all the students and all the parents and saying, okay, this is the beginning of the school year. We're going to talk about cell phones a little bit. And here's why they're good. Here's why they're bad. And moms and dads, here's what's going to happen if your kid doesn't know how to use a cell phone is that they're going to get lower marks. They're going to get whatever, all that kind of stuff. That sort of says little Johnny or little Janie is going to be an idiot and barely get any credits unless they figure this out. You need to educate both of those sides. You need to have both the kids and the parents going. The kids going, yeah, okay, whatever, and the parents going, well, you're not staying in this school another year. But you're going to keep moving.
Get the hell out of the house.
Yeah.
I have a theory. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist because, but just bear with me.
This alt-left conspiracy.
Right? This wacko alt-left conspiracy. Just, okay, bear with me. So we have conservative provinces. I'll take Alberta as an example who, hold the education curriculum for students. It's a more of a reductionist, I'm going to say, push from conservative governments in terms of what they're teaching in their curriculums. Where kids have access to information in the immediate, and you're sitting in a classroom saying, dinosaurs don't exist, right?
It's all for that?
Right. And you as a child know that dinosaurs exist, and you would have your phone to Google dinosaurs exists, but you don't have that access. So you have to listen to what, the teacher is saying to you. But we also have kids who don't have any retention ability. So when they get home or have their phone, they're not going to remember to look up whether dinosaurs exists. So all they're doing in the moment is taking what the teacher is saying, not having any ability to look it up, which we all do in the moment, right? I don't know. I'm going to Google it. And so that is planted in their head. They're off into something else, like playing whatever they're playing when they get home from school. But that is still planted without them actually sourcing out proper information. That really does sound like an alt-left conspiracy.
I'm glad you said it out loud. But I mean, I think that the problem with that is I think there's maybe a danger of having one or two teachers who would do that who would take advantage of that kind of situation. But I don't feel that teachers are remotely smart enough to en masse do anything as a group.
No, but it's the curriculum that they're being forced to teach.
Yeah, but I think even curriculum. I mean, look at Steve. He's a teacher.
Not anymore.
Damn good looking one, I'll have you know.
But I mean, you have your curriculum, and there's things you have to hit from the curriculum. But you're not. Most teachers take that and go, okay, how can I put my spin on this?
Okay.
How can I do this? You know what I mean?
I just think so poorly of conservative governments and their weird planning that someone in a room thought that would work. I don't know.
I think just even knowing my brief time as a teacher and just after when there's a teacher's strike or work to rule, and you can't get teachers to do anything. You can't. There's just no way it's going to happen. It's just not happening.
So here, it really, in my mind, it comes down to it comes down to a really fundamental question about what schools are for, right? Like in your mind, what are schools for?
I know what schools are supposed to be. I think schools have become a housing institution while mom and dad are working.
I think for younger grades, I even right up into portions of high school, I think it's largely turned into a babysitting is what it's turned into. Unfortunately, it's supposed to be a time of expanding intellect and curiosity and
interests,
exactly. And it is. I think it still is for a lot of places and a lot of kids and a lot of teachers. It certainly still is that way. But there's that just general assumption, I think, by a lot of parents that it's just get out of the house so I can go to work. That's it.
Well, and so this is the problem is at its heart, schools are supposed to be about learning. Mm-hmm. And you're right about the childcare part to some extent, but I think the more that we focus on this sort of stuff rather than enriching the student experience, what they're really saying is that they believe schools are more about creating compliant young people than it is about creating lively young learners, right?
Critical
they want
thinking.
Rule followers. They want people who are going to go through the system as intended. They want cogs. And so they do this back to basics thing. And so I did a paper in university about the history of back to basics education because I was curious how far back this goes. As long as education has existed, a demand to get back to basics has existed.
Sure.
And it's been the exact same thing. They complicate things, and then 20 years later, they go, simplify it, folks. Back to math. 1 + 1 = 2, baby. And then it's just this weird cycle. And all it really comes down to is people who have nothing to do with education making determinations about the classroom.
Yeah. Like government.
Steve has talked a lot like Kojak this episode, and it's distressing to me.
I don't think people know who Kojak is.
Steve doesn't know who Kojak is.
No.
I know he's bald. I know that much.
You said it, baby.
Oh my God.
It's nice. I like it. It's a good. It brings me back to my.
I'll talk
childhood.
like that just for you, baby.
We get you a lollipop. You'll be perfect.
Yeah.
He had a lollipop in the TV show, Steve.
I connected that dot
Tootsie
all
Roll.
by myself. Nothing gets by me, I tell you.
Yeah, I think it stands in direct contradiction, right, of this idea of back to basics, but also parental rights. It's like, what do you want? Because back in the day, I mean, I think even back to my public school days, and some of the stuff that teachers got away with the kids, as they were the absolute rule of law in that classroom, and they would never be able to do what they did in the day. Some of the things were justified, some of the things were warranted, some of the things were for the greater good and the benefit of the kid. But some stuff was like, if parents knew, they would go mental if that was happening.
Yeah, the focus has changed a lot, and the blame has shifted a lot for a lot of things that happen. Like in a lot of cases, if something happens in the classroom, in the past, the student would be asked, "Why did you do this?"
Yeah,
and that would be where the focus is. These days, sometimes the focus is, why didn't the teacher prevent this? And it robs that kid of a lot of agency, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just like this little ball of reflexes.
I don't. My heart goes out to teachers.
I shall dismount off of my sofa.
No, my heart goes out to teachers, right?
Baby.
Oh my God, baby.
It's going to be a nightmare. Yeah.
It is. It's really hard. I mean, and that's one of the things that, a lot of people don't realize. They think, well, teachers have summers off. They have Christmas off. Yes, they do. And they have, if you're lucky, you get a good wage and you get to have good holidays and all that kind of stuff. That's fantastic. But you earn those holidays because when you're going in, it's like for anybody else who's not a teacher, it'd be like going into a workplace with every year you've got a whole new set of crazy workmates. They just are, you've got to figure them all out, and some of them are awesome. Some of them want you dead.
But not only that, your job performance is measured entirely by their job performance.
Exactly. It's a nightmare.
And let's be real, they're cleaning out their classrooms till end of June, and they're already back in classrooms now, right? So they don't have.
Yeah. And every teacher in Saskatchewan saw this message, and their hearts filled with dread at needing to administer this in the fall.
Oh, what a nightmare.
Like, whether or not you agree with it, and I'm still kind of ambivalent, like in the situation as it is, no, but in a world where needs are better met, sure. But like, this is just getting dumped on their plates, and they're all going to have to figure it out. I picked a very good year to take off.
You did. They'll have it all sorted.
You
by
knew,
next year.
didn't you?
They'll figure it all out.
Oh, yeah. All problems will be solved.
Yeah, all problems will be solved. Excellent timing. That's really
absolutely.
Good. Speaking of problems, sometimes you have a problem with a robot. That was a segue.
If you got a problem, I'll solve it.
Exactly.
Check on my hook. DJ revolves it.
In the news, curiously, this past week was the fact that Pierre Poilievre had a rally in Kirkland Lake.
Electrifying rally.
Yeah, which is about 8,000 people. And drew a good crowd, 100 people, 150 people or something like that. Maybe, I don't know exactly.
I don't think Kirkland Lake is an enormous place. I don't know much about it. Mid-sized town?
Yeah, it's tiny, I think, is the idea.
8,000.
It's a mid-sized town. It's a metropolis in Saskatchewan is what it is.
Bustling metropolis.
Exactly. It's a major airport hub.
Right.
And the reviews of the rally came in online, and they were glowing. However, they turned out to be a little too glowing, and they were also from people who had apparently visited Kirkland Lake from Russia, England, America.
So 72% of them identified as being from the States in their profiles.
Yeah.
So apparently a lot of folks commuting to Poilievre rallies.
And to Kirkland Lake.
In Kirkland Lake.
I want to see how far Kirkland Lake is to Toronto. Let's find out.
Okay.
Okay. Because let's say Toronto's the closest major hub to fly into. So Toronto.
Please wait.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to take a quick moment to make sure that we credit the 280 Times. It's the Twitter account that initially broke the story about the bots.
They blocked me, so I can't say anything to them. I don't know why they blocked me, but they blocked me.
You're not alt left enough.
280 Times. If you're watching and or listening and would be so kind as to unblock our friend Brittlestar, he would appreciate.
But he doesn't care.
Also, at every opportunity, 280 Times is using their work on this to promote and draw attention to the Canada Disability Benefit. So go read what they've been posting about that, please.
Oh, yeah. Right. So that's probably why, exactly. I think I was trying to help people with that before. Yeah. And it didn't go well. I ended up. I was
trying to help people, and I wound up blocked.
You're right. Yeah, exactly.
I was getting yelled at all the time. I have a big problem with the ODSP, and it's not enough. It's not nearly enough money whatsoever. Yeah. And then I was trying to help some folk, and then I ended up getting yelled at by a bunch of other folk. It might have been for that reason. I was like, I'm out. All right.
It's distinctly possible. Well, regardless, they did excellent work cracking this story, and they deserve to be credited.
I agree. And just so you know, the people that posted, they were just still buzzing about the rally in Kirkland Lake, who came from the States. If they flew into Toronto, they've made a 6.5-hour drive to get to Kirkland Lake.
They love them some Poilievre.
Listen, that is conviction.
Okay, my favorite is that a bunch of them said that they had to brave the cold to attend the rally.
Yeah.
It was indeed 25 degrees. Brave cold.
So there's a couple of things here. Someone said to
August me, cold.
As someone said to me, and quite rightly, that anyone can pay for those kind of bots. You don't have to be on. You don't have to own the account. Anybody.
There's no confirmation who bought it.
No,
we know who benefits, but we don't know who bought.
But they don't really benefit. And I'm not playing necessarily full devil's advocate here, but they don't necessarily really benefit. So if I was a dastardly Liberal Party, then I said to myself, well, what I would want to do is I'm going to set up a whole bunch of bots. They're going to be found. It's going to be ridiculous. They're going to be found out. It's going to look really, really terrible. Regardless if it's them that did it or if the Conservatives did it. False flag, exactly. Or the Conservatives that did it. Either way, it's awful. Find out and don't do that. That's just horrible because it really does create a faux momentum. Everyone looks and goes, oh, yeah, I guess it is. Because people are picking up 60% or less of what they're reading as they scroll by. Yeah. And it's not good.
I was researching a story on this and about half of the traffic on the internet right now is bots.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Literally about half of the traffic. And so a lot of this stuff is just manufacturing consensus and making it look like there's agreement. But the other thing that it's trying to do, and in the case of Kirkland Lake, it was really obvious, it's just trying to game trending. They're just trying to get the Kirkland Lake rally trending.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those posts you'll find, they're kind of gibberishy and they loop around to the same 4 or 5 keywords.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that stays in the algorithm. Because none of the posts get any likes. None of the posts get any traction. It's not that.
No,
it's to steer the algorithm. That's really what it is, right? I mean, and then when you look at all of them that were printed, it's a variation. Some of them are word for word, and then the others will have a different variation that is word for word from. I just don't understand why the Franklin Lake rally was I feel like this Kirkland was the Lake, test. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Kirkland Lake. This is the tester. I feel like this is the test.
I think it's happened before.
Oh, I think it's happened before.
It's every party has been implicated to at least some degree with bot posting, whether it be, through a political affiliate, whether it be through some independent operator. There's bots out there like crazy. And so I really think the answer to this is bipartisan. Right? There's already talk of a public inquiry into this.
Yeah.
And it seems like such an obvious slam dunk.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's sick of this stuff. Let's deal with real people. Right? And frankly, I have a suspicion that at least to some degree the parties are stuck in a bit of a bot farm arm race where if one stops putting out the bot farm, then they're going to get just overrun on all the websites. and look like a massive minority. I genuinely think there's a little bit of a sort of a standoff here.
Maybe. I think that there's lots of overly ardent Trudeau supporters, and you'll see them coming out and they are just a bit crazy. They're just a little bit nuts.
And a little bit slogany. Like there's not a lot of actual substance to anything they say.
No. However, I haven't seen a concerted effort. No. Now, it might just be my experience online. Maybe I haven't seen it. But I haven't seen a concerted effort on some posts where it's been like, there's, like I think you would have seen it today necessarily, or this week rather, with Trump's bringing up the whole, Trudeau is Castro's son thing and all that kind of thing. Again, you think you would see it in posts about that if there was a concerted effort to bot farm responses to that. They might do something about that. But I haven't seen it from the Trudeau side. But I have seen lots of crazy, overly enthusiastic supporters. It's much like there's a documentary that showed the Trump rallies and showed Biden supporters, and the Biden supporter is just crazy, but sitting at home, and her Biden sign kind of wobbles and falls off the wall, and she goes, eh. And it's like, yeah, I think there's lots of different type of people out there for sure. However, I haven't seen the bot farms on the same side or the same capacity that I've seen suggested by the conservative side. Just when you mention Polyev on Twitter, you are bombarded by stuff all the time. Yeah. Even when I put out stuff doesn't mention anybody by name at all, but just sort of alludes to certain things, that gets attacked by stuff as well occasionally. Like I think my LCBO post was a really good example. It's like nonstop, and it's like, holy smokes. Yeah. Who's paying for this?
And that was my question, is how much of that do you think aligns with moneyed interests, right? How much of that aligns with, private industries that stand to benefit from, in the LCBO case, there's lots of private industries that stand to benefit from that. Surely one of them would be willing to throw some money in the pot for a bot farm, right? They're not that expensive.
No.
And like what you are seeing is the most obvious type, right? The comments, but there's way more than that.
Yeah.
Like view counts, view time, likes get gamed shares, like crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because they're trying to game the algorithm. And in a lot of cases, like you guys, you're both content creators, like the algorithm is entirely based on things like view time and interactions and all that stuff. And it'll show you to more people. And so it's constantly doing that sort of A/B testing where it watches to see the reactions that you get. And so if you can artificially create those really good reactions, then it'll show it to a larger organic audience too. And a lot of that's what they're trying to do too.
Right.
Is just break those boundaries of their own sort of internals and expand their audiences. And by gaming the likes and gaming the comments and stuff, they do that as well.
I mean, not that social media is reality, but I mean, we're living in a distorted world right now, right? I mean, and it speaks to things like the polls. They bring up the polls all the time. Well, I've never been called and asked who I'm voting for. So are these polls legit?
I mean,
are these
I do, but it's just an uncle. Who you voting for this year? Sit that damn Trudeau.
Well, you guys have an election. You have an election.
You took the Batmobile from Grandma, but you're not taking the election.
That's right.
He wants to tax the Batmobile. The carbon tax on the afterburner is ridiculous.
Oh my God. Yeah. So like, I don't get it. I think it's sad. And I mean, if it is happening on like any political front, it's equally as sad. Like, I just don't understand. I mean, when you see all the different accounts, it was a visual, right? I think that visual certainly got some attention.
Yeah.
I like that the cons have come out to say, you know what? No, nobody had anything to do with that. And they're going to spin it like somehow it was the NDP Liberal coalition farmed out these bot farms and to make them look like victims anyway.
But that quick denial is important, right?
Yeah.
Because if they had just hoped that it would blow over, then it's a lot easier for them to push back against something like an inquiry or any sort of action.
Yeah.
If they're saying wasn't us, we think it's bad too. Okay, then let's do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, I think the three of us would agree that it's bad, and it's the inquiry. It's like, yeah, let's find out. Let's find out. Because if it is the Liberals and the NDP, that's not good. Let's not do that. That's terrible.
I think it's pretty easy to make the point that it's in the public interest to know how many bots there are on websites. Like,
sure.
I think that's
unless you're doing this, like it's yeah.
And so there's the trick, right? Is all these social media websites are going to fight against this tooth and nail.
Yeah, of course.
Because they can't use the numbers to the advertisers if they can't have bots, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
which just
and
brings
the great
a
wheel of capitalism
continues to spin. Which brings me to the fascinating video. Did you see the video by Linda Yaccarino, head of CEO of Twitter at all?
The one, wasn't she wearing a necklace that said like "Mama" and "Free Speech"
Mama.
or something?
Free Speech Mama. Yeah. My favorite thing about it, I really wanted to do a parody of it, but I thought I'll probably just lose my account on Twitter if I do that.
Yeah.
Was the fact that the way it was cut, her arms looked separated from her body. It's like I wanted to green screen my hands in front of me, so you couldn't tell, and my hands would be like, they'd go right around behind my back and come out the other side.
You could do so much with that.
I know, but it's too dodgy. Not yet.
Put it on threads. Put it on
exactly. Put it on threads.
The bustling website that is Threads.
But we're beholden to these American places. We'll just finish up quickly with this. We're beholden to these American places like Twitter, X, and Facebook, and all that kind of stuff. And this is just really briefly talking about the effects of Tim Walz, the new VP nominee in the States, and how he's coined or named or framed Trump and crew weird. And we talked quite a bit about this last week, but of course it's happening more and more now on the Canadian side of things. The Canadians have really adopted this idea of like calling, meaning the Liberals largely, are calling the Conservatives weird and calling Poilievre weird and all that kind of stuff. Is that, I know that Andrew Coyne said it was dullards. The Liberal Party were dullards for doing that. And I was like, well, dullards isn't winning any races.
Noted intellectual Andrew Coyne.
And Scott Reed, who has previously been on this show. And we love Scott. Scott's amazing. Scott said, he was like, this is pathetic. They've got to think up their own thing. And I thought that was funny because I thought to myself, well, we're not creating art here, Scott.
No.
We're just trying to win elections. It's not like there's marks for originality. I was going to vote for the Conservatives, but this is a way more original take. No one's thinking like that.
I disagree with him, and the big reason why is because it's working for a very specific reason. And it's because this sort of movement has tried to frame itself as sort of the arbiters of normal. Like when it comes to trans issues, they're like, it's weird, so we want to be the normal ones, even though we're obsessed with other people's bodies. And with all of these different things, they're trying to frame themselves as the normal, the status quo point of view. And so if we take that and turn it on its head and say, no, you're the weirdos asking all these questions, you weirdos, then the scales fall off. Yeah. And so I see where he's coming from, but this works in such a very specific and distinctive way where like calling... Like Weird Al Yankovic does not get insulted when you call him weird. No. But when you call somebody who's desperate to fit in and seem normal weird, it's like a dagger. Right? So
I'm okay with being a 4-year-old that's like, I know you are, but what am I? Like, I'm fine with that in this respect. Right? Like it's in the interactions that I've had where, people give their ramble about whatever, and I'm just like, weird. It shuts them down. It shuts them down. And not because they're like, I'm above responding to it. They don't know how to respond to it. That's the thing.
And this when they go low, we go high thing has led to Democrats having their backsides handed to them for half a decade.
Yeah. No. Thanks, Michelle
Obama. At a
certain
point, it's not, well, and They go low, we go high. If you've ever played sports, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. My thing is that it's the messaging on largely on the conservative and right side of things, Republican side of things, has been such at a fourth grade level and immune to rational thought and ration and logic that you can't compete with it that way. You can't. It's like it's like if you had a fight with an argument with a kid in grade 4. Yes, I mean now as an adult, and you'd be like, I want to tell you what you're doing is wrong and bad for the planet, and they're like, go to hell. And you're like, oh yeah, well you're an idiot and your hair looks stupid. You're like So I mean, it's dumb and I hate it, but at the same time, I totally get why it's working. I totally get it. It's because if someone's not listening to reason and not listening to rational discussion, then your only recourse is to say, well, you're just an idiot. You're just weird.
And in a lot of these cases, I think it's also important to remember that there's folks who are being led down conservative ideologies and believe what they believe, and that's fine. But then there's cultists out there. Right. And that's the folks that we're really talking about here. There are people who are immune to reality, who just believe what they believe, and they're going to support their side no matter what they support.
Sure.
And so addressing that as a political ideology isn't working because they didn't get there through reason. They didn't ration their way into the position. So they're not going to rational their way out of it.
Well, and I think the whole, sorry, go ahead.
No, just it's the emotionality of it's what's going to get them right back out.
Well, I think that's the whole, when they go low, we go high. That was applicable pre-COVID, perhaps, right? When it was just starting with the alt wrong. But since COVID, we've had rational debate, or we've tried to have rational debates and discussions, and they just don't get it. And I don't like us sort of being reduced to that simplest type of form, but sometimes you just have to be like, you're dumb. And just like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't expel any more energy into it except for saying you're dumb.
And when they go low, we go high. Really open the door for Trump into the White House.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not exactly a successful approach.
So do we think it's going to work in Canada?
Maybe a little.
I think we have other things. Like we have hashtags, right? Like there's hashtags Never Polyev and all that kind of stuff. I think that's our version of it. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need to create something with like maple syrup. I don't know. We need to make it our own, but
part of it is it's sticking better because the Democrats have done a good job of framing sort of ordinary folks at the front, right? Like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz give pretty strong every person sort of vibes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone in Canadian politics give those same sort of vibes? Like, they're all kind of Laurentian elite types, at least to some degree.
Charlie Angus, I like him.
Sean Fraser.
I meant like party leaders.
I see. Party leaders.
But yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I like that you both went to the fun ones.
Yeah.
But point is, like, is there any party leader who can really stand up there and be like, they're weird, I'm not? Like, you're all.
But that's why we have to do the lifting, right?
True,
and also because we, in the last little bit, we seem to be conforming more to the types of conservatism out of the US. Mm-hmm. Timbit Trump, as I like to call Poilievre. Maybe we just have to usurp it and use it because we're following in their footsteps.
My hope is that we have both. We can do both. My hope is that we can do that you're weird thing and just be that shut down, that idea of like, listen, I'm not even going to waste my time trying to explain to you why you're wrong. You're just weird. Mm-hmm. I know it's a waste of my breath. I want us to continue on that. And I also want the other track to be the more long form answers, like the capital gains video by Trudeau. Mm-hmm. That's not winning any new voters over whatsoever.
No.
That plus him saying this guy needs to touch grass, that combination, that might work.
You're weird. Therefore,
I love
you're weird. Though. And also, let me explain for those of you who are actually not weird, let me explain capital gains. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just hoping. I'm hopeful. That's as we're going to talk about, but we won't talk about it now. But the return of the good And I know it's a little early days for that in the UK, certainly right now, which is terrible.
They've had some oopsies.
They're out of the gate strong.
Yeah.
But I mean, the mood has switched. The mood has shifted in the US, that's for sure. And I think that's going to have an impact on Canada. But we'll see.
Mhm.
Maybe I might be optimistic, but I think it will have an impact.
Fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
it's interesting because I think, one of the frames that people look at Canadian elections in is how will they work with the American
Mhm.
leaders,
Yeah.
right? And
Totally.
Poilievre working with Trump was a pretty obvious fit,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what you think about them, they're so
Trump. He would have been
obviously.
absolutely subservient to Trump.
Railroaded. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But they were viewed as being compatible,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, true.
And Trudeau and Harris and Walz are viewed as being pretty compatible. So I think it definitely does help their fortunes. It's also potentially going to force Poilievre to have to tone it back a little bit because he's going to have to make deals with these folks.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. I don't know if it's. I think it'll be interesting. I'm really curious to see where we're going to be after the U.S. election to see what the numbers are going to turn around to here in Canada.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Let's finish off now with our much beloved and much requested improvised theme song.
You think I'd be better prepared after?
Okay, I'm going to go a cappella again, and this time I'm going to rip off the opening to the way that they're to the recording of the national anthem that the Nylons did. And if you were in schools, you will be intimately familiar because it goes.
Okay,
it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, it's fantastic. An homage. We'll say for copyright reasons, we'll call it an homage.
An homage. Everything's an homage.
The Nylons, very litigious band.
Listen, you don't know.
I'm going to use the zipper. Can you hear that?
I can hear that. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, you ready?
Okay, here we go. Yeah, go for it. Is Steve's going to start us off?
He's got to start because I got to follow.
All right. Do 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 do.
Podcast is broken. Podcast is broken. Podcast is broken. Podcast is broken. Wow. Big finish on the zipper. Big
coming
finish
together.
on the zipper.
It's coming together.
It's coming together.
I can't wait for the album.
We're refining the system.
Exactly. We're doing something.
It'll be our alt-left album.
We'll put out one episode that's just going to be all songs.
It's a musical episode.
Can we?
We should do a musical episode.
Can we dedicate it to what was
Jocko
his name?
999
Jocko, so many numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, Jocko, bunch of numbers.
Okay, thanks, Jocko.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much for watching and or listening to Podcast is Broken. You can find us at podcastisbroken.ca and sign up and get email notifications every time there's a new episode. You can also find us and subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast platform, like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Casts or, I don't know, something else. Other than that, we'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks so much for being here. See you guys.
Have a good week.
Take care of yourselves, folks.